All right, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. We're going to talk about playful and publicly available demonstrations in Power BI. And the description for this session is like, do you need to showcase a Power BI to a customer or perhaps even to yourself? I've been building a lot of these Power BI reports, and sometimes I tend to take out some anonymously data or unsensitive data sets and just build some blog posts about this or around this and share for the world to see. So this session is about those kind of blog posts and also some giveaways that you can download and try for yourself. But before we begin with all this, I would like to just say some things about why we are showcasing and why I think it's so important that you do this as well. So hopefully you will be super inspired by this session, and you're going to go home and you're going to feel like, yeah, I want to show this to the world. I have so many people I want to show this for. And I want to tell you why I think this is really important. So first of all, we like to think knowledge can be taught kind of like this. And unfortunately, it cannot. Forcing knowledge onto people that they are not receptive to, it's not going to have that much of an effect. It's going to have a little effect. And, well, some of it might stick, most won't last. And at the end of the day, it might feel like all you're doing is providing education and training, and people, they just want more and more, and they never seem to really learn anything. And this isn't a very sustainable solution. So may I instead offer an alternative? Begin with inspiration. When people look like this, you have succeeded. This is the look you're looking for in any classroom, in any workshop, in any session that you're doing just like this. When you get this kind of look, then you have succeeded. This is an inspired person right there. And the amazing thing that happens to inspired people is that they take action. They search knowledge by themselves, and it's driven from the inside. So it's not you forcing from the outside, forcing them to learn things or forcing knowledge upon them. It's them driving this journey from the inside. So my best recipe for success is to begin with inspiration and follow up with instructions. This tends to skip right, but we tend to skip right to the instructional part. We like to just go right into telling someone how things work and how you do things or what button to press without them actually knowing why they would need to press it in the first place. And I would like to tell you the story of the two brick builders. They were building a wall, and they're out there. It's scorching heat, and they're working for long days. And then a traveler passes by and asks one of them, "What are you doing?" And one of the brick builders said, I'm building this wall. This is really hard work in the scorching sun. It's long days, and I won't even be alive by the time this thing is completed, but I'm building a wall. I'm part of this. And the traveler then asks the other brick builder the same question. And I realize now that image is not supposed to be shown right now. Whoops. Okay, so the other brick builder says, I am building a cathedral. It's hard work in the scorching sun. It's long days, and I won't even be alive by the time this thing is completed, but I'm building a cathedral, and I'm part of this. Now imagine these two builders. They're building and realizing that the first set of windows don't align with the bricks as they are building, as you can see on the image like this. Like, imagine they are building this specific house. And as they come up to the first set of windows, one of them is definitely going to notice that, or both of them will notice that these windows will not align as you travel up the wall. But one of them is going to say, whoa, I see the bigger picture here. I'm going to take action and make sure that this work is corrected before moving on. And one of them is probably going to shrug and say, you know what, this is not my job. I'm building a wall. And this is the reason why I showcase things, to inspire others. So with that, let's begin and look at some demos. For today, let's go through some temperature data, so the Sweden's populations, the soft value coffee calculator, some crime data, and calendar analytics, and finally, we'll have a look at personal teams usage. So with that, I'm gonna switch over and share another screen, and we'll start with the temperature data. Now, you can also find the temperature data here. It's written in English in my blog, which is on blogs.altitude365.com/cloudapt. And it's going to look something like this. You just have to scroll down a little bit to get to the temperature data blog post. And in this, I have described a friend of mine who happens to gather a lot of temperature data from his house. And at this point, he's up to about 1.2 million rows of raw temperature data. And so he reached out and said, can we do something about this? Can you create something in Power BI using this? And obviously we can. So what I did was not only this blog post, but I also published this report to the web so that you can try it out yourself and make insights about the temperature data in his house. So if you click on this link, it's going to open up the publicly published Power BI report that looks something like this. Not the most beautiful part, but it does the job. And we have 5 pages on this one. On the first one, I have created this just like simple overview, and it tells us what is the warmest in Celsius that we have received in this case the kitchen. What is the average temperature and what is the coldest it's ever been in the kitchen? And this is made from 245,000 measures. And then we have the living room with 18,000 measures and the scrub with 245,000 measures. And then I can go outside as well. And you can look at the glassed balcony or out north or out south. Now, in here, there are very bigger differences in the warmth, since it's outside and it's summer and winter. And now you can see how you do not want to live in Sweden during winters. But the thing about this part that you can show is that I can actually show all of the outside sensors just by clicking this one. And this is because I've stacked the different options here. So I've selected inside or outside, and then I've put or grouped all the sensors if they are inside or outside. And I've told the slicer in this case that you can only select one thing at a time. And even though I've done that, you can still select the outside box, and that's going to select all the 3 of them. But you can never compare like the kitchen to outside out north, because they are so different in terms of temperature. But I can look at how it looks inside on an average. Now, to change tab in this case, you have to go down here on the arrow to the right. Now, usually when you look at Power BI reports, you would have all the pages up here on the left. But since this is a publicly published report, you have to live with the arrows down at the bottom. Now, what I wanted to show in this case was how Power BI can be used to show different things, even though you have like the same graphs in here. So the same graph can be transformed into something else than what it is in the beginning. So first of all, we have all the different months up here, and then down here we have a clock. So this is from midnight to midnight. This is the average temperature over one day. However, this is the average temperature, or sorry, it's the lowest, highest, and average over any day selected in this graph. But if I select, for example, Q1 here, which is January, February, and March, then you can see that all of this is changing. So in this time, it usually is much warmer in the in the glassed balcony than the rest of the outside temperatures. However, inside it doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't change that much, even though it's winter. Or we could actually go in and select just one simple month. We can say July, for example, and you would see that the the axis changed slightly. So the warmest it's been in the scrub, in this case, for the average temperature in the scrub in July would be 25 degrees. But if I deselect this and go back, it would be 24.33. So the same graph, but it changes as I'm clicking around in this, and I can make this kind of insights. And I can do this not only by using the filters up here, but I could also just click around. Like I could select May or this specific sensor in May, and I would see that specific sensor in May and see that the sun does have something to do with the warmth of this sensor. So it's a good way of showing like how you can interact with data, how everything can change based on what you're clicking around in, as opposed to in an Excel file or a PowerPoint where everything is just static. It looks the way you have made it, and you are the one who needs to make the insight. In this case, I could build a report and other people can make interesting insights about it. Moving on, this I'll actually skip this page, but because this has to do with days. It just looks at, well, how warm has it been on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and throughout the different days of the month, regardless of which months it actually is. So I'm going to skip ahead to the last page here, where I am looking at the extremes. So down there, you can see the extremes in terms of how cold it is and how warm it is, the coldest and the warmest. And at this point, it's showing all the different sensors. And it tells us that the coldest day that we have registered is the 29th of January 2021. And the warmest day was in August, the 9th of August 2021, where it was 52 degrees outside, and the coldest was 25 minus, which is the difference of 78 degrees Celsius. But I can, of course, select just one sensor and say that at this specific place, at this sensor, how big of a difference has it been? Or like inside, in the kitchen, how big of a difference has it been? And it's not that much of a difference because it's inside, but it probably has something to do with peaks, like you opening the oven and releasing a lot of warmth into the room, for example. Now it's just been a difference of 12 degrees in the kitchen throughout these years. Interestingly enough, though, if we go back to the balcony, we can see that it's been 52 degrees warmth at some point, and that was at the 9th of August. If we want to dig down into this and look deeper, we can go back to this page where we can select a certain date, like I have done, and I've selected this specific day, the 9th of August. So we see throughout the day how warm it is on the inside and on the outside here. So the slicer, or sorry, the graph on the right side would be the outside sensors, and well, you can probably guess that this is the balcony, the glassed balcony. Now this is a bit well, hard to see. Like it doesn't go that far down, but we can by switching the hierarchy, going downwards like this. So what I've done here is I've grouped the temperature in different layers, and saying that in the first layer I want to see the average temperature per hour, and then the average temperature per 20 minutes, and now the average temperature per 5 minutes. So by clicking this, I can actually change the graph and the granularity of this graph on the fly as a user. And now we can see that we went above 50 degrees Celsius at about 15:35 in the afternoon, and it kept there for just a short peak, and then it went back down again. And at almost an hour later, like 50 minutes later, we did no longer have above 50 degrees Celsius. So for about 50 minutes of that day, you could almost use this as a sauna, almost. But what I'm fetching at is basically all the things that you can do with this report. You can dig down, and it's interactive towards you, so you decide what you want to see. This is the greatness of Power BI. Some of you might notice these zoom sliders. This is fairly new. I think it's been out for a few months at least. And what they do is giving us as the users the ability to zoom in, changing the axis. And this is useful when we want to see those 35 minutes up close like this. So we can make it look like easier in this case and go up to there. That would be the 1535, and then the peak looks a bit simpler. And we can now more easily compare how the temperature was in other places at the same time. Okay, so that was a short introduction to the temperature. So let's head over to this tab, which will show you the Sweden's population in Power BI. And this is a report that I would usually use for Swedes because it is it is useful for anyone living in Sweden, but it shows really the capacity of Power BI and how not everything is static. So usually when I show this, I would say that this is the kind of numbers that any person might need to present to, like a board, for example, or a management team. And they would say that, you know what, you need to go out and you need to find out how many people are now living in this country compared to how many was living in this country before. And here, 1993, sorry for this being in Swedish, there were 4.4 million women living in here, in this country, and 4.3 million men living in here. And this is the increase curve throughout the years up until 2019. This is an increase of 15.99% women and 20.25% men. But what about going down into a certain region or a certain municipality? So these are the different regions in Sweden, and we can see which one has had an increase. And clicking it will alter the graph and show us a different view, like a different visual. So instead of creating a new visual like we would have done in Excel or PowerPoint, we can just click around and the graph is going to change for our demands. Now, we can even go further down into the region of Stockholm, which is the capital in Sweden. And we can see that we have an increase on all the municipalities. If we do go into, for example, the most southern part of Sweden, we can see that the biggest city in there is having an increase of people, but the smaller one, like this one, actually have a slight decrease in people. So more people have moved out of this town than they have moved into the town. But on an average in the entire region, it's an increase, of course. Now, this is not all we can do with this. I can actually look at, like in this case, this city, and say that, okay, so yeah, on a total, we have fewer people now than we had before. But what about younger people? Now we can use this age slide up here, which goes from 0 to 100, and say that we just want to look at people between the age of 0 to 25. And we can see a much deeper decrease. And this tells us that, well, younger people are moving away from this city, or they are becoming older and they are still staying. But nevertheless, not that many people are moving into this city within this age gap. And if we do the same on the other way around, we can go up to 100 and we can change this to, for example, 60, 65, for example. And we can see an increase instead. We can even see an increase in women here, telling us that women tend to live longer than men. So there are more women of higher age living in this city than men on an average. And the important thing is, like, so you could have done this in Excel easily, but then your management team might come back to you and say, oh, this is awesome, this is great, but what if we extend the age gap to 60 years old to 100 years old? And then you would have to go back to the drawing board and you would have to pick up all the pieces of information and redo all your calculations and bring out a new graph that that is increased with the age group of 60. But now we can just draw the slider back to 60 and we're done. And we can select any kind of municipality in this list and we get a new graph. So again, the power of Power BI is really in the interactiveness of the data. So you as the user would be the person that actually make the insight based on what you have in here. And if we deselect everything, you can clearly see that women live longer than men, at least in Sweden, like so. And as we rise, fewer and fewer men are surviving, but more and more women are. So actually pretty interesting data. Another thing is we like to talk about diversity and inclusion. And this tab, we've created the income averages in Swedish crowns. And an interesting thing is, like, we as Swedes, we like to pride ourselves saying that we are so equal between men and women. And if someone would say the increase in salary for men is only 70%, but for women it's 88%, so this is a good step, right? Then we could actually look at the numbers and see that, well, since the women were starting so much lower than the men in the year 1999, up to, in this case, 2018, the 88% actually means a lower amount of money than the 70% for men. So we have some distance yet to travel, I would say, in this quest. Anyhow, I would usually say that any Power BI report is only as good as the data that you put in it, right? Power BI is pretty useless if you don't have data. But then I made a blog post, and that's what we're going to look into right now. My soft value coffee calculator. And I had to actually retract what I just said about you need data to make a Power BI report. So in this blog post right here, I've made a Power BI report that doesn't have any data in it from the beginning. Everything is actually created within the Power BI report. Now I made this because I noticed, or I observed, how very few people are complaining about bad coffee now that we've been working at home, well, during the pandemic. And before, when we were at the offices, people would always complain about bad coffee. And they would be like, oh, our coffee machines, they're so terrible. I hate the coffee here. So let's go and drink some bad coffee. They would still do it, but they would complain about it. And this isn't exactly efficient. We don't get energy from complaining about stuff. It actually just takes a lot of time. So I figured, how much is it costing the companies to have bad coffee? And what if you spend some of that money that you're currently putting into complaining about coffee into making better coffee? So you can either read the blog post and how I've described this and how I've built this, or you can just simply click this link or the picture down here, and it's going to take you to the again, interactive and publicly available Power BI report. And in here we have a bunch of sliders. These are what if parameters in a Power BI report, and they are useful because in any Power BI report you can add them, and you can have the user draw this or use this slider to make the insights of their own. Like, what if we increased salaries by this amount? What if we decreased cost by this percentage? What if we added 2 more trucks to our route? What if we employed this amount of people, for example? And that makes it possible for you to alter things and see, like, for example, what if you had an hourly income or your hourly rate, and you would increase that by this amount of money? What would that look like over two-year period? Or you can look at it by customer level or by people level, and you can simply make new changes as in what if parameters. Anyhow, this entire report is what if parameters, and we can say here that we are a company of 2,600 employees. We can go up to 10,000. Let's say we are 6,430 people, and we have an average cost of, in this case, Swedish crowns. So you'll have to look at the currency rate for Swedish crowns. 414 Swedish crowns. This would be the equivalent to about $40, I think, like $40 US. And this is per hour. And then how many minutes are these people spending complaining about bad coffee per day? Now, 35 minutes might be a lot. Some places really do have terrible coffee, but others have better coffee. So let's put this down to, I don't know, 20 to 22 minutes. And then how many coffee machines do we have? Like, do we have 38 of them? No, we have 48 of them. We have almost 6,500 employees. We have 60 machines, 1 per 100. And it costs 6.5 or $650 if we translate this to US dollars per month to support these and maintain them. And then anytime we purchase a new one, it costs 15,000 or 1,500 bucks. Or I can decrease this into whole thousands. Like, let's say it's cost 900 bucks to buy a new coffee machine, and then 650 bucks to maintain it. And on the left, on the right side, it says that this organization could then spend 6.4 million crowns, which is divided by 10 to get about to get into US dollars. So 650,000, isn't it right? Yeah, 650,000 US dollars. And if we spent that amount of money to reduce complaints for 12 minutes of the day, that's not even the entire 22 minutes that we have here. We would still have people complaining about coffee for 10 minutes per day, but we would have the same cost as we do have before. So we could spend 6.5 million crowns. We could increase the coffee quality immensely, and we would probably even go plus doing it. So it would probably earn us money, because people who are inspired, as we saw before, and filled off energy, not complaining about coffee, they will probably do better work. So a simple thing that you can use as a calculator. You can do any kind of calculations like this in Power BI Desktop, and Power BI Desktop is, by the way, free, downloadable from the Microsoft Store. So you could actually begin without any data even today if you wanted to, just using what if parameters. All right. So sometime ago, I got my hands on some crimes data, and this is on the old blog post that I would usually write for back in 2019, but it's still available from my Cloud App blog. So you can, if you scroll to the last page, you will still find this blog post. And in this, I happened to get my hands on some crimes data from Sacramento, 2006. This is all the crimes that were committed in Sacramento 2006 in January, so 1 month. And I figured I could actually create something and publish it on the web for people to play around with. And I also made some interesting insights in this. So I'll tell you what they are, and you can try to see if you can find even more interesting insights apart from the ones that I'm currently doing. So what I've done here is a heat map, first of all. So we can see the worst parts of being in Sacramento in January 2006. Where did you not want to be in this city at this time? But we can also look in any crime committed on Mondays to Sundays. Again, sorry for being in Swedish. You can zoom in and zoom out and see that, okay, so what was the worst place to be in terms of crimes on a Monday in January in Sacramento 2006? And also, what kind of crime was most common on Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays? And again, we can click around on anything, and it's going to alter to what we're clicking at. So everything is interactive. I also wanted to show, like, where was the crime committed specifically. The heat map is good because it gives you a hint of where crimes are committed, but I wanted to look exactly where they were committed. And this map, as you can see here, if I click on it, it has this little informational icon. It says this has too many values. There are too many crimes committed at any specific place for all the dots to actually be presented. So I'm not able to go into exactly where they were committed since there are too many of them. But I figured I want to see a part of these crimes based on where they were many crimes or few crimes. So what I did here was I grouped the longitude and latitude. I also have a blog post about this a bit earlier on in Cloud Apps. And what this does is it rounds off the numbers of the longitude and latitude, creating this web-like graph that tells us how many crimes were committed in this area, and then any crimes committed in this area, from this one, will actually be pulled into this specific dot right there, and any one in that as well. And if I then click on one of these dots, I now have a filtered down region, and now we can zoom in and see exactly where the crimes were committed in this specific area, or in this specific area right here. And now it filters down any other crime, which means that this dot that previously was very, very small, because maybe there's another place in this map that has a lot more crimes, well, that dot is no longer available to us since we have filtered it out, meaning that these dots will increase in size in comparison to one another, making it easier for us to look into a specific region or area and see where were the crimes committed. Now, one of the things that I wanted to use this for was actually not just to expose how many crimes were committed, but how can we make this world a little bit better using this kind of data? So I wanted to see, for example, here, the towed stored vehicles. What would be the worst street to park on because of the risk of having your vehicle towed away? And it seems to be this street right here, based on the heat map. So maybe there's a crossroad here. Maybe there are signs saying you are not allowed to park here, but they're not very clear. So I could use this data, and then I could look at maps and filter out, like, what does this road look like, and why do people keep getting towed away from this place? And maybe it is hard to see that it's actually illegal to park here. Maybe you're blocking a fire post or something, and that would be something for the city then to be able to use to actually improve the quality of life for its citizens. I also made a very spooky insight, and that's regarding the missing persons. Like, where do people go missing from? And if I click missing persons right here, you can see on the map that one dot is sticking out from the rest of the others, and that would be this one. If I zoom in, you can see that 43 people vanished from this specific location in 1 month. So I just really hope that this is the police station, and when you don't know where the people disappeared from, you just put this place in as like the default, because otherwise this might be a good place to start looking in terms of shadiness and missing persons. So if I were a police officer, I would probably look into this specific place. All right, so these were some of the reports that I've been publishing and presenting to you so that you can actually just find them and click around and play with them. But I have 2 more reports, and they are not reports that you can just look into like this. You actually need to download them first. And you can find those, and I'm going to send out all the links to this when I'm done. You can find all of those in my GitHub repository called giveaways. Now I have some Power Apps and stuff like that here, but the 2 things that we are going to look at here is the personal teams usage report, as well as the calendar analytics report. And both of these 2, they are really about self-awareness, kind of like Viva Insight. The My Analytics part of Viva Insight. How are you spending your time? What are you doing with your life? And how can you improve? So it has nothing to do with other people's data, just your own data. Now, I've downloaded both of them and started them up. So I'll switch sharing and show my screen of Power BI instead. But what I wanted to say, mention to you is that notice that this is a PBIT file and this is a PBIX file. Usually when you work with Power BI Desktop, it's going to save into a PBIX file. And well, that's just a Power BI file, but you can save it as a Power BI template, which looks like this. And a Power BI template will prompt you for a parameter when you start it, a parameter that you can actually set yourself or create yourself. So in both of these cases, I have asked for the user's email address, which means that when you start the report, you get a box, you fill in your own email address, and then it's going to use that as the source to connect to the source for your specific mailbox, which means that you also have to log in to actually give Power BI your own data, but it's only going to happen locally on your own computer, which also means that you cannot see my data and I can't see your data, for example. Anyhow, let's dig into the calendar analytics to start with. And with that, I need to open the report instead and change my screen. Like so. If you do have any kind of questions, feel free to interrupt or type them into the chat. I'm assuming that I will have some kind of pause at some point where you will have the ability to actually sneak in with some questions. Okay, so you should probably see my screen right now. It should tell you calendar analytics and has a grayish background. And my computer has now frozen. Perfect timing. Okay, so I'll tell you what we're looking at without clicking around in it since my computer has frozen. But the calendar analytics is a tool that I've built in Power BI, and it connects to your own calendar and shows you how good you are at planning ahead. Now, for some people, you don't want to plan ahead for too long. You want to have most of your meetings like almost immediately. For other people, this is a good measurement or a KPI of how good am I at planning ahead in my calendar life. So down here you can see different month, and this is actually the month that the meeting was created in, not when it occurred. So when you create the meeting request, or someone else created a meeting request for you and sent it to you, that's when the graph is actually visualizing this specific meeting. And the bar here tells how many days ahead was this meeting on an average supposed to happen or occur in. So this tells me that over this period of time, I have had an average of 18 days of planning ahead time. So any meeting on an average that I would schedule or be scheduled for would actually occur within 3 weeks. Well, not calendar weeks, but just 3 weeks. But I can also see that the most of my meetings, almost 40%, they are actually scheduled within 7 days of their occurrence. Then I have another about 20% of my meetings that are scheduled 2 weeks ahead of time, 3 to 4 weeks, and then I have some that are scheduled more than 30 days ahead. And looking at this, I can determine that usually this bar happens when I schedule for vacation. So when I go on vacation before summertime, I tend to schedule long ahead, and then the meeting would occur after the vacation was done. And I don't really have maybe vacations for 40 or 50 days, but overlapping with my customers, this tends to actually happen. Like I could schedule a meeting in July, and it's scheduled to occur in September, because then I know that all of us is going to be back from any kind of vacation. But during the autumn and spring, then I would usually plan a little shorter ahead. And some of my meetings are even immediately, or in the past even. It has happened that I have scheduled meetings that occurred in the past, and this would usually be when, for example, I'm in Microsoft Teams and I have a group chat with external people. And I can't just click on the group call button because, well, it's not compatible with that. Instead, we have to create a meeting if we want to have a voice chat or an audio chat. So I would come to a conclusion with my group that let's have a spontaneous call, but then I would have to create a meeting immediately and invite them to that meeting. So this doesn't actually bother me that much, but it's a good thing that I can just visualize this for myself and see how good am I at planning ahead, and do I like these numbers? Because at the end of the day, these numbers are just numbers. You are the one who have to decide if they are good or bad. Do you like to have 18.71 on an average of days planned ahead, or is it too much? Is it too little? Am I not available because I'm usually not available for 3 weeks? Is that a bad thing? Or am I so good at planning ahead that I don't have to stress into every meeting all the time? Is that a good thing, maybe? Regardless of what you think, this is downloadable, and all you need is Power BI Desktop, which you can download from Microsoft Store. You open the PBIT file, and you have to enter your own email address. That's all you really need to do. No, for some reason it's actually unfroze. So you can also click around on this, see how many meetings were scheduled over this period of time that was going to occur within 7 to 8 days, and how many were immediate. Like, when did I schedule these immediate meetings? Or you can also click on, for example, 1 month, like March, and see how did March in 2021 stand out to the rest of my averages. In some cases, like within 7 days, it was actually fewer than it would usually be. And in some cases, like the 3 to 4 weeks, it's higher than it usually is. Clicking July will tell me that, well, not that surprisingly, almost half of my meetings was to occur after the summertime was over. And again, this is your data. You are the only one who can see this, and it's not going to have any data when you start it. So you have to enter your own email address if you want to have this kind of insight. The other report, also available on GitHub, is a report called Personal Teams Usage. And it looks like this. And it has the exact same feature. So what you do is you start it up, you log in, and this is using a kind of new connector. I think this was released sometime in spring this year. And what it does is it allows Power BI to connect straight into a Microsoft connector for your personal Teams usage. And then it downloads all this into fields like this. And then I've just, scattered it around. So you can actually change anything you want in this report, and you can improve it, and you can make so much things better, or you can just look into, what it tells you. It will always only include 90 days back, because that's how much information Microsoft is keeping tabs on us. And that means that in this case, it's going to show me data from the 16th of July. And what we've done is we've given you some call-out values, like this one, during this period, and the selection above, which means that you can actually decrease like this, and it's going to have an effect on the amount of messages. Or going back here, I have participated in 2,206 chat messages and 155 channel messages in my own tenant, I would say. Now, in my case, I'm a consultant, and I'm a guest at I don't know how many tenants, and I have other accounts in customer tenants. So my Teams usage would be spread out among multiple platforms. But if you are usually working in one environment, then this would make sense. And it doesn't tell you how many chat messages you sent or received. It tells us that you were participating in this amount, and also channel messages. Now you can use this data to kind of drive a change in behavior. Do you like this kind of numbers? Do you feel like this is inclusive? Or wait a minute, chat messages are quickly to send, but it's more transparent if we would send channel messages instead. So let's try to focus on sending information as channel messages whenever I'm urged to send something as a chat message. Up here on this blue bar, we are showing the video to audio radio. So this means that whenever you are in a call like this, in a meeting like this, or in a call, like when you're calling one other person, then the audio minutes would tick away, right? Anytime you are using audio, it's going to increase the amount of minutes you have spent in audio using Microsoft Teams during this period. But not every time you have audio on, you would also have the camera on. So what we're doing is that we're taking audio minutes as the 100% of the time that you were spent in a situation where you had the ability to have the camera on. And then we say that based on that, how much time did you actually have the camera on? And in my case, it was 77% of the time. So personally, I think this is bad. I'm trying to get this up, and I sometimes fall back into, I have a bad network connectivity, or how I look and how I've greeted you, so I'm going to turn off my camera. But I'm really trying to stop that kind of behavior, and using these numbers, I can track my progress and see that I'm getting there. And here on the right side, you can see it day by day. So the blue charts here highlights any days that you were above 60% radio. And it also tells me that 47% of the days I had more than 60% video rating of that specific day. So this is also based on your usage. So if you are calling with Teams a lot, well, then you have more minutes to spend also using video. And if you make like one call a month, well, if you're using video on that specific call, then you would get 100% usage immediately. And then it does something that I actually really like. It tells us 15 functions that you can use in Microsoft Teams. And this is going to show up as red if you haven't used it in this period of time. And this tells us that there are a lot of functions that you can use. And it kind of gives us an idea of what are we going to search for if we want to know more about what do you mean with audio time, one-on-one calls, meeting or organized ad hoc. What is that? And then this gives us like the search argument or the search text string that we can actually use. So if I see this and say that, wait, I've never sent an urgent message. A lot of my messages are urgent. I want to use this function. Now I know what to search for in response to, I didn't even know that you could send an urgent message. Now I know, and I haven't done it. So now I know what to look for. Now, this also have 3 tabs, and you can go into the Teams usage tab to look into the different teams that you are a part of and see how much usage is going on in these teams. Maybe you can use this to filter down on the teams you want to be part of, and maybe leave some of the teams that doesn't have any action in them. And the Teams summary, you'd also have a list of how many active users does these teams have, and do they have guests in them or not? Now, I would argue that maybe we shouldn't have used red for 0, like saying it's a bad thing that you don't have guests in your tenant, but that's for another day. That's also customizable if you want to change that for yourself. If you feel like it's a good thing that you don't have guests, then switch this around. And that's also the beauty of this kind of reports. I've just created the PBIT file. You open them, you download your own data, and when you feel comfortable, like, okay, so this now looks like I wanted to. This now have some KPIs that I want to look into. Then you can save this, and now it's your report. So now it's up to you to follow your progress. And if you want to, and if you have a Power BI Pro license, this is, however, when it comes into licensing discussions, up until now, everything I've shown you has been free. But if you do have a Power BI Pro license, then you can publish this report as well. Clicking this button will show you all the workspaces in Power BI that you have available, and you will always have my own workspace available to anyone, regardless if you have a Power BI Pro license or not. But you will not be able to schedule an update unless you have a Power BI Pro license. So with a Power BI Pro license, you can publish this to your own workspace, and you can say that I want this to update daily, and then you're going to get daily data into your own personal Teams usage dashboard. So with that, I would like to go back to the PowerPoint, like so. And you can still not move through the pages. Perfect. Let's go through all of these again. Back to the correct one. Whoops, sorry. So we've covered temperature data, Sweden's population, the soft value coffee calculator, crime data, and then 2 reports that you can download and open in Power BI desktop by yourselves in calendar analytics as well as personal teams usage. Now, all of this is found on these links, and this is also one of the reasons why I'm presenting this as a PowerPoint within the Teams meeting, because, well, if you haven't noticed this before, you can now click on these links on the screen. So I'll keep this up for a little while. If you're looking at this, well, on YouTube or afterwards, then obviously you can click them. So reach out for these links or just pause the video and type them in manually. And with that, if you have clicked on them, let's say you have that now, perfect. In summary, build cathedrals, don't build walls. Inspire people so that they know the bigger picture, and if they want to be a part of the why that you are explaining, then they will drive from the inside to learn more. Install Power BI Desktop from Microsoft Store. If it hasn't been cleared throughout my demonstration, it is free and it's just one click away. The user makes the insight, not necessarily the maker. So just because I'm building the report doesn't mean that I have to be the one making all the insights into it. I like to see myself as the one building the framework so that others can make insights in this data. And of course, reach out. Together we can do more. So if you want to reach me on Twitter, you have my Twitter handle right there. And then I also have a backwards compatible Teams address. It means that it's actually backwards compatible to legacy systems like Skype or email. So if that is your preferred way of communication, feel free to reach out using email as well. And don't forget to join the aMS quiz to win prizes. If you haven't scanned this before, so now would be the time to scan this, or click on any links. I'm guessing that the aMS moderator is going to post the quiz link right below. There it is. And now we have 9 minutes for questions. So feel free to just throw them out in the chat, and the moderator, can you walk me through if I've gotten any questions that I've missed?
Yes, sure. So there's one main question, I think. The rest was just regarding the links or the demos you showed. So I shared those already in the chat. So the question we have is whether you've got some, do you have some plan creating a template to analyze of LinkedIn data or another template from others? So around LinkedIn data.
Oh, that turned out big. Yes, I've actually looked into LinkedIn data a few times, but as of right now, you would, from the standard connectors, you would usually just get LinkedIn marketing data. So you would have to have that service. It's not your own LinkedIn connections and stuff like that. But in many cases, I think in LinkedIn as well, or I know for example, for Spotify, you can go in and download your personal data, and you would get an Excel file or a CSV file consisting all your personal information. So I have reached out to Spotify and asked for my personal data, and I'm thinking about building a template on that data so that others can just use the same template. And that would probably work for LinkedIn as well. So if I would just get my hands on the data, then yes, I would have use for a LinkedIn template data. And if I were ever to build one, you can be sure that I will publish that on my blog post as well. I'm sorry for spamming the chat right now. I tried to just paste my bullet points with all the links, and it turned out to be super huge font size.
Great. Any other questions for Ville right now?
All right.
No, it's
super
not.
Thankful to be here.
Yeah, no, it was great having that, really demo-filled session. I'm very happy that there were very few slides and a lot of actually, great interactive dashboards. So it was very interesting.
Always the risk of demoing things live.
Yeah, but things went overall relatively well.
Yes.
And yeah, great. Yeah, so the GitHub links to the Power BI dashboards or to the Power BI templates and the files you can download to open in Power BI desktop are all in the chat. Feel free to check them out, download them, test them, have a look at them. I'm certainly going to check that calendar analytics. That sounds interesting, especially because my calendar was filled a lot recently more. And would be nice to actually see how things were from an overall perspective, you could say. Yeah.
It's usually the case, right? With anyone feeling like, oh, I'm just overwhelmed with calendar posts. But now you can see it for yourself. I can, before I leave, I can actually send you the link to download Power BI Desktop directly from Microsoft Store as well. Just trying to familiarize myself with Windows 11 right now. So searching for the copy link button. There it is. And there is the link to Power BI Desktop in Microsoft Store, which is free. So you can filter, you can just download it and use it as you wish. All right.
Excellent. Again, thank you very much for presenting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and have a great day. And a great weekend when you come to that.